Ke rona ba re buile re santse re le mo Olwazini re ba kopile akere ke lo re ile beke e hitileng ka ga re tsamae re santse re tlo go dula re bua dikgang tsa rona. I am Lorato Khomolemo, your program director, your facilitator, your moderator. We are talking about divorce and money today. Khange Masisi. Last week we started and we said let's talk about marriage and money. This week, divorce and money. Ha go le thata, go tlhakatlhakane, re sa tlhole re itse gore re bereka jang, re dira eng. Re na le maikarabelo bontsi ba rona, re na le bana ba ba tlhokang go tlhokomelwa, re na le ditiro tse re tshwanetseng re di somarele. Re tla be re sentse ha kae ha re ka dumelana re le mmogo ke rona re kopantseng malapa re le babedi. Go tla bo go palang gore re tseye maikarabelo a rona re nne hatshe re buisane re dumelane e be re tswelela pele. Gongwe o mong a tswelela pele from their side re sa kopana mme re itse gore re a kae le gore re somarela jang ditiro tsa rona le bontsinyana kgotsa bonnyane bo re na leng bone. Today I'm not alone. Ke tsamaya le batho ba me who continue to teach this nation, grow this nation, and do the most in terms of giving us the financial literacy that we need. Let me tell you who I am with. This gentleman does not want to leave. He listened to me when I said Kharatsa Zweli.
Hi.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm well, how are you?
I'm very well.
Are you
thanks.
good?
No, I'm very well.
Introduce yourself to the nation.
Hi, everyone. My name is Zweli Twala. I'm from FNB. Thank you.
Young Mildred Drifty Magel.
Listen, it's marvelous.
Arbuela.
It's what's like in Haratsamaimo. But what for state to Tlarbon some other time.
Are you well?
I'm well and you?
I'm
You
good,
look
thanks.
gorgeous.
Oh,
Sparkly. always.
please, you're
Listen.
making me blush. Introduce yourself to the
Hi
nation.
everyone, my name is Winnie Kamulani. I am from Winpro Financial Services.
The new lady on the block. How are you doing?
You.
I'm okay. Are you well?
Yes, I am. Thank you so much for having me.
That is great. Introduce yourself to the nation.
Hi, everybody. My name's Elaine Mortimer. I'm from Nedbank. I work in the operations space. I am a admitted attorney, and my speciality was family law, so I'm hoping to add some value today.
Do you see how hard today's subject is? We had to bring an admitted attorney to come speak to us about these issues. Hello, baby. Who's it, my lover?
I'm good, and you?
You're back?
I am back. Yo, this place is everything.
We have to give our thanks to Olwazini, right?
No, definitely. They outdid themselves.
And they're treating us so well.
My dear, did you see the breakfast?
Please,
Oh,
man.
my word. Everything was like, yeah.
Stop it. Introduce yourself to the nation.
Hi, everybody. This is Lerato Mabalio once again from Standard Bank.
Now, we have been discussing marriage and money. We started with marriage and money, and we said to the nation we will bring a 3-part series on this. Next week, we're discussing death and money. But today, we want to focus on divorce, a tricky subject, a demanding thing to go through. But we want to speak about it because we said we will continue to raise the most difficult subjects. COVID-19 hit us in 2020. A phenomenon we were not ready for as a nation, as a universe, as globally. A lot happened. Things changed. In the process, people changed because responsibilities changed. Guys, we survived COVID.
Yes.
We survived COVID. Ha re sa tlhole re na le bo di-talking stage gona anong. A re nyalaneng because, I mean, re emelang.
For us that are married, we are like, can't we go back and choose again?
But it is an important subject that we want to have. Before we speak about divorce, which, yes, is a difficult subject, but I want us to start this conversation, Lerato, from separation. Mm-hmm. Because too often, a lot goes wrong during that part of separation. By the time we get to divorce, a lot has happened. Ga re tlhole re buisana, re lwanne, malapa a lwanne. We only now want that part to be finalized, right? Let's speak about the difficulties and the challenges that come with separation particularly, and the financial impact that comes with separation.
Hello, Mozansi. Abu Anki Kifilwe Maele. Hutswaka Blumanda. Hey, dingata man. The disadvantage sa divorce ke hore bana ba sokola, bana ba struggle emotionally ne and financially. Jalo ka re le batswadi o tla bo setse o le a single mother batho ba bo mme hangata especially ke bone ba sufferang because of ke bone ba salang le bana. So bontate ha ba setse ba tswile lenyalong ha ba sana ga bana in most cases. And then o thola hore ka divorce o loser dintho tsa hao tse ngata bo koloi, more especially ha re nyalane in community of property. Ale se ya hao tlamehile o share le monna ona la ile hore mohlomong ene ha sa sebetsa or ha sana eng ale se ya lona tlamehile o share le yena.
Before we speak about divorce, which, yes, is a difficult subject, but I want us to start this conversation, Lerato, from separation. By the time we get to divorce, a lot has happened. Ga re tlhole re buisana, re lwanne, malapa a lwanne. We only now want that part to be finalized, right? Let's speak about the difficulties and the challenges that come with separation particularly, and the financial impact that comes with separation.
Yo, Lerato, you hit home. You hit home because I can tell you, I always say getting married is something. It's something beautiful. It's something precious. It's something that most of the people, they aspire. But should things go sour,
Yes.
and you get to that point that now you need to go your separate ways, that's when now we start experiencing the tension, everybody wanting to come into the picture, sometimes to come and maybe mediate whatever that's happening, or sometimes to come and make the situation even worse.
Right.
Now, you touched base on the separation before we get to making everything finalized. And you are spot on when you are saying that's when everything now starts getting messed up. Because of some people, they will separate for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years without formalizing and legalizing what needs to be legalized.
Right.
Now, besides you being stuck as a person, your finances also are impacted.
Right.
Because remember now, when I know that legally I'm married, however, we are living separate lifestyles, that for the fact that I know at the back of my mind that I'm married, it's impacting me in a way because of now I cannot move on. I'm stuck, number one, as an individual. There are certain things that I want to acquire, but because of now, I know that I'm still married. I tend to hold back,
Right.
to say, yo, just now I renovate my house and that person comes to claim it. Or just now I buy a car and it forms part of my divorce settlement.
Right.
Just now I invest more money and it becomes part of the divorce settlement.
Right.
So there's so many things that puts you on hold as a person. You are unable to acquire or go further with your life because of now you are afraid to say, what is this other person busy doing? And what is it that this other person will come and take from my hard work? And I think that's where things now starts getting messed up.
Right.
And remember, sometimes there's children also in between.
Yes.
And now whoever that's left with the children, it's starting to maybe somehow spend more because
Right.
of now the children are with me. Maybe sometimes the other partner it's a matured person. They will maybe
finance whatever that the children need. But truth be told, you that's staying with the child, you are the one that spends more because of now the child is here. And the other party will say, I'm sending you X amount of money, therefore you must manage it. And sometimes it becomes challenging to manage whatever X amount that you are sent. Now, the financial implication is you are unable to move. And remember, sometimes when you get married, the first thing that you want to have, it's a house. Now you've got a house, you are staying there, the other party is staying somewhere,
else.
but now that other party can't even buy another property because of now they've got their name on this particular bond. So whenever they go to Beru wanting to apply for whatever, they will count that as one of the expenses. So it still forms part of your expenses because of legally, it's still part of whatever that you acquired while things were still nice and booming.
So it's still, it reflects as yours,
Yes,
whether you are in the house or not.
exactly. So it still forms part of your expenses when we do your analysis. Let's say now you want to come and say, look, I want to buy a flat. I'm no longer staying with my wife. Unfortunately, the only document that guides us is to say, this is what you have, these are the expenses, therefore we need to take into account that this still forms part of your responsibilities.
Elaine, let's speak about, I still want us to talk about the process of separation. Like I said, we never really zoom into the nitty-gritties of separation.
Yeah.
Though a lot happens during separation. Now, if I know that we're getting separated, what are some of the documentation that I should consider or that should be put in place, whether it is between us or for myself, right? Because there could be documents that we had put in place previously between us, and then there are documents that I could consider for myself. What are some of those documents?
Okay, so it's a very important thing to have these discussions with your partner if you are preparing to leave or separate or begin the process of separation. So one of the documents that you will need is your original marriage certificate,
Okay.
as well as your birth certificates for the children, as well as any financials that you have, so your bank statements, and also, ladies or gentlemen, if your partner, whoever you are married to, runs a business, if you
Okay.
can get access to their information, or any financial documents that they may have, copy of a title deed that's in both of your names or in your own name, is imperative so that you can make an informed financial decision.
Right.
That being said, you must also look at how you are married. If you're married in community of property, you are both responsible for the assets and the liability, so your debts that you owe. So if you and I are married, for example,
Right.
and we're married in community of property,
Yes.
my debt is your debt is my
Correct.
debt. If you 10 years later decide to divorce me and you've got 200,000 Rand in loans, I'm also responsible for that because of how we are married.
Right.
Whereas if you are married with an ANC, out of community of property, your debt would be your debt and my debt would be mine.
Right.
So I will not be held accountable. So knowing also how you are married is imperative. So if you have an antenuptial contract, that would be another document that you would need, because those are the kinds of discussions that you need to have. Another document which is very important if you're looking at separating and you have children is a parenting plan.
Right.
You don't need an attorney to do all of this. You can actually go directly to the family law courts and they will actually help you
Right.
do facilitate your divorce and guide you as to what you need and how you can do it if you are in agreement with each other, which is important, especially when there's family and children involved. It's not worth it to fight, because attorneys can get very expensive. I speak from experience.
And maybe, just as part of the financial implications,
Yeah.
we should just elaborate on that. The financial implications that come, or cost, right, that comes with attorneys, because sometimes you and I are married, right, and then we fight, right, and we ultimately agree that we must divorce, but we have not had an honest reflection on the impact the financial impact of starting the process, right? And just starting the process because for instance, and I'll make it a silly example, and we've been talking about budgets and budget plans and all of that. But if I lived in Sandton and my office was in Sunninghill, right? And I was used to driving from Sandton to Sunninghill every day. And then we undergo separation. And now I must find a house for myself. And the house is in Randburg. It's further, right, from what I was used to. Oh, I find a house in Centurion.
Yeah.
Right? It's further than what I was used to. Which means there are implications of petrol, diesel money, travel that need to be added. And I'm speaking about a very minor thing, right? That we never really consider. But I want us to just a little bit speak about the legal cost.
So legal costs are quite steep. If you have a situation when you're married and there is a lot of assets involved, or trust accounts, or businesses, getting an attorney who actually knows what they're doing, in the long run, you might not know what your husband's worth. Your husband might be worth millions, or your wife might be the breadwinner and worth millions, and then you just decide to leave and put yourself off in a worse financial situation, like having to move far out and incurring additional expenses. So getting legal advice is a good idea if you can do it. Yes, attorneys are expensive, but there are other avenues that you could possibly look at, such as legal aid, if you fall into the bracket that allows you to go to legal aid, just to get some advice on how to proceed. But again, like you mentioned, getting separated and getting divorced is a huge financial impact. You need to look at the situation holistically, because by you removing yourself from that situation, you're actually essentially cutting your income by half. So you have to make smart and informed decisions. And spending a fortune on attorneys rather than on your children is not advisable. So if you and your partner can sit and have an honest, frank conversation and come to some kind of resolution as to how to dissolve your estate amicably, I would recommend doing that highly.
Fantastic. Oswini, last week when we were speaking about marriage and money, we spoke about joint accounts, and we spoke about how couples, and I remember how you were speaking about it with so much, you were saying, it's the ease and the flow of money in a household, and ensuring that we can we are both accountable for what needs to happen. Now, let's speak about the instances where the accounts are joined, but now we must undergo separation.
I think I like what my colleagues have alluded to, because this thing has to just do with being sympathetic towards each other in the process as parents, as adults. I mean, divorce in its nature is a very terrible thing to go through. There's moving from this nice, flowery situation, comfortable, the honeymoon and whatever, and getting married. You spoke about that day when you get married, and it's such a huge contrast to being where we find ourselves now.
Right.
We just it's just two different things. They're at different spectrums. So even feelings, even the way we relate to each other, now there's third parties that come through that whenever in the past they want to just come and put their hands on deck and try to help their side of the family and the side of the family. So there's a lot that's already just happening, and a lot can just go wrong, and the tensions are just high. So I think the best thing is that just be as cooperative as possible to each other as the divorcing parties, because the children, my mother used to say, when she's still alive, my mother used to say in the past, when the elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers. So I think that it's not really worth it for the two elephants to fight and then influence the grass on the level. Now, in terms of the financial implications and when it comes to children and everything like that, it will be impacted because remember, like Lerato has mentioned that there's school that needs to be taken care of. There's uniforms that needs to be taken. There's transport. There's extra incurring costs that you don't know how to place them at that time when you are going through. So my best suggestion is that really let's have that working together relationship as adults so that the grass doesn't suffer.
Right.
Yeah.
Zweli, let's speak a little bit about tracking personal expenses when undergoing separation. Last week, you guys said 2 salaries are better than one.
Yes, we
I
did.
did not forget that part.
We did.
You
We
guys,
really did.
me who lives on 1 salary in my house currently,
Yes.
you made me aware that 2 better than 1.
Yes.
Yeah, I still have to find the other one. But let's speak about tracking personal expenses.
Yes. Thanks for the question. So remember, when you are together, you are both incurring expenses as a unit, together as one, as we alluded to a couple of weeks back. So if you were together and you're used to doing things together, there's certain responsibilities that you might have shared together as a couple to say, you know what, I'm going to take care of A, take care of B.
Right.
Or in some instances where you have breadwinners where the guys are saying, take care of everything. You just use your finances or your money for certain expenses. So when you're about to go through separation or when you see that divorce is imminent, that's when you actually need to sit down and say, what are my expenses in my individual capacity? We might have had a joint budget, but now I need to actually look at a budget for myself. What are my expenses? What are things that I still need to take care of? In a situation where it was just 1 salary and there's a breadwinner, that's where you say, okay, what is it that I will need as assistance from my partner? How much will I need them to give me so that I can survive? I will ask my other panel member to tell me the word for it, where if you separate, as a husband, you're still liable to actually pay your spouse maintenance, right? So if you are, as a husband, responsible for maintenance of your partner, how much will I need? So that's when you start, okay, this is my budget, these are my expenses, and this is what I need to do. So you can account for cash, medical expenses, education for your kids, but right there, you now start to take yourself from the joint part to be an individual. And that's when you also need to decide who's going to be enjoying some of these assets that we have together. Who's taking this house, who's taking this car, who's taking this, but how much are those expenses so that when you know and you line them down, even when you go to court, you will know that these are actually my expenses, this is how much I'll need from the settlement, this is how much I'll need as an allowance or maintenance from my partner going forward.
Lerato, can I chip in there on that question of Winnie around the joint accounts? Remember, I love what my colleagues are saying when they say, if possible, try to talk to one another.
Right.
There are instances whereby now that both of us are using this account,
Right.
the other party would want to come to the financial institution and say, I don't want this person to have access anymore. And then the other one will also come and say, I don't want you to give statements because of this person now is invading in my private space.
Right.
So it is very critical that as and when you get to the point that you feel like, you know what, we cannot stomach each other anymore. You talk about things that you did jointly and say, please go to the bank, any bank of your choice, go and open your account,
Okay.
or let us both go and open our separate accounts,
accounts.
and then get that money out of their account that we were using jointly, and then you take your card, I take my card, and then we start it from there. Because of now, there are many instances whereby individuals will come and the other one would want to come and say, I don't want this one to have access, I would want to remove this one. And it puts us also as a financial institution in an awkward space because of
Right.
now we cannot say we take your word for it, we cannot say we take the other one's word for it. We need to make sure that both parties come, we explain to them what needs to happen, and then we can take it from there.
Yes.
Olerato mentioned that currently it's her salary only and there's nobody else adding to that. When we talk about 2 salaries. So when you, in the process of separation, you actually need to start reversing back to say, where was I before this? But there might have been debts or liabilities that you incurred together. Also share that as a couple. Which ones am I going to take? Which ones are they going to take? Because now you're together, now you're no longer together, so you will not just share the assets only, but in terms of the debt as well, to say, what is it that I'm going to take? What is it that they're going to take?
I think I want to throw an open question to all of you. When we spoke, and we've been speaking about all of these different things, you guys taught me that there must be planning to everything financially.
Yes.
Are we then saying also, in this case, I must plan for my divorce?
Yeah.
Okay, can I just say something here? So, because of my upbringing and how my background of being an attorney, one of the things that I was taught was you always have an antenuptial contract, because that is you actually essentially planning for your divorce. Because your antenuptial contract actually protects you from a claim from your husband or your wife, however you decide. If we get married in community of property, you go and buy a car for 500,000 Rand and you decide to leave me for the lovely lady that you met at work, I am still going to be liable for half of your car by virtue of our marriage. Whereas if same scenario, you and I are married but out of community of property, because I have an antenuptial contract, that debt is for you. You must pay that. The car is yours as well. I can't claim the car. However, if I decide to be a stay-at-home wife and I have 3 kids, I can claim maintenance from you. So I think for me, when you go into a marriage, you also need to be smart enough to have these hard conversations with your partner. And if you're on a level that you're mature enough and you can get married, you should have these conversations as well, because not everything is set in stone. So it's good to have those discussions that this is what I would like.
I knew this conversation was going to get heated up. I knew it.
And can I tell you, remember when we were talking about credit scoring?
Yes.
I mentioned that the most important thing that you can do to yourself is to say, should something go wrong in my space, will I be able to live the kind of life that I'm living now? So already you are planning for the worst case scenario, not only divorce, even death. Because of should something go wrong,
Yes.
am I going to be able to come and say, at least I'm out of this relationship, but whatever that it's my responsibility, I can still be able to afford it. Now, you would see that from the very first topic that we had, we're just adding on to say, you as an individual, you need to be in a very comfortable space in terms of your finances and not make them necessarily the other party's responsibility. So when you get into this, you need to say, I understand Lerato, I understand Lerato's financial muscle, and I'm going to stop there. Don't go and start overspending and whatnot, because of should something go wrong, now you would be stuck in a situation that you are forced now to try to find ways on how you're going to survive, because of now the finances are not allowing you. Your muscle is not allowing you.
But if I can interject, my mom always taught me, and Mom, this is a shout out to you because you're awesome. She's actually currently going through a divorce herself now at the age of 65. So it's tough. Even at that age, it is a tough thing. But one thing that my mom always taught me is always be financially independent and never rely on anyone to look after you. So if you are able to do that, wonderful. If you can't, then you need to think about, what do I need to survive? How much do I need to survive? And what do I need from my partner to make sure that my kids and myself have a roof over our head and foods in our tummies and we're getting an education? That
Can
should
I
be
get
the
a high
bare
five?
that should be the bare minimum of what
Even
you should get out of a
flying in
divorce.
this conversation. It's
Important also
Yeah.
to know yourself as your personal finances as well, because that's understanding yourself, how far you can go. And remember, I mentioned the issue of keeping up with the Joneses. So it's not really ideal to get into a marriage, because you now start to see that this is the time for me to start acquiring additional unnecessary assets that might be, yes, we all want good life, but what ifs, you know? And you mentioned yesterday also, in last week's episode as well, that sometimes when people get married out of community of property,
Seems like you don't love them enough. Why don't you want to share everything with me?
Yes.
That's what you normally get when you say, let's go A and C. They say, no, you don't love me. So let's be in community. But when you're in community, you both lose your independence, because now everything, you're depending on each other. Even when you get into agreements, you need to consult with your partner as well. And
You must remember, with every type of marital regime, there's
Yes.
pros and cons to each one. So
Yeah.
there's three that you can have. It's the in-community property, out of community property, and then out of community property, including accrual. So if you want to feel that way, that you want to feel unified with your partner, maybe then look at the out of community property with the accrual, because then that's from date of marriage, everything falls, like you become one.
yes,
Then you split that later on. But if I come into the marriage with the house, that house
It's
is
still yours,
mine.
yeah.
You can't touch it.
including your liabilities, they're still yours.
Exactly.
So everything that you had
So
before,
there are
gotta
other
remain yours.
options. So people shouldn't feel that you have to get married in community property because you want to feel loved by your partner. No, you should love your partner no matter how you're married. Love and respect each other.
Can you see how they're all talking amongst
Sorry.
themselves? This is just like a conversation that they're having on their own. But I think it's because it's such an interesting subject, and we're having this conversation because we believe that our people must then have this kind of information. Laura, now we've spoken about tracking expenses. Let's come to the assets, which is a touchy subject. There's Elaine taking a deep breath where we're talking of. Let's talk about the assets, and I want us to start with we're now in the process of divorce, right? And we're talking about our assets. Let's start with in community.
Okay. I think the most, all assets are important.
Right.
That's why they are called assets. However, there's this asset. Whatever this asset, it always has issues. The house.
The house.
The house always is that asset that has got an issue, because remember, when you initially bought this house, there was so much emotional attachment
Love.
and love and the gardening and changing the walls, this color, that color. So there's so much emotion that was invested in this asset.
Right.
Hence, it's one of those assets that everybody would want to hold on to,
Right.
because of now everything that has been invested on it. So I would say, once you get to that point that you feel like, you know what, we've separated, we went to the family law, like Elaine has said, it's not working. Now we want to formalize it. Because you are able to talk, the first point of contact would be obviously to seek legal advice. And then once maybe you decide to say, you know what, for the fact that I have children with you, and we all know, normally the mothers, I'm not saying all mothers because of it's a Women's Month, but we normally see mothers doing a great job.
Right.
Yes, there's that minority that's disgracing us, but today let's talk about the ones that are not disgracing us.
Correct.
So if we're going to agree that the wife is going to stay with the kids,
Yes.
and therefore you would want the wife to have the house.
And I think I want to say this. So sorry for allowing me to interject. But you said something very important. You said, if we are agreeing,
Yes.
right? Because it's not casting stone that the kids must remain with a particular parent.
Exactly.
There has to be an agreement that comes with it.
Yes.
Correct.
We must all agree to say, you're going to take care of the kids,
Yes.
or I will stay with the kids, and this is what you will do to make sure that your kids don't forget you as a parent.
Right.
Now, you need to make sure that once you've got your legal advice and you've somehow agreed with your attorney or whoever that's helping you with the process, you see where this is the way that eventually we're heading. You need to make sure that you visit the bank or
Okay.
the financial institution that funded your home loan.
Okay.
You explain to them to say, look, we are going through the process of divorce, and somehow we might, because remember sometimes you say something today and then tomorrow you change. So for the fact that you're still debating and thinking about it, put it out there to your banker to say, we are considering for the wife to take care of the house or take over the house.
Right.
Now the banker will do the calculation to say, will the wife be able to afford this particular house on her name only?
Right.
Because of, remember when we did a joint application, we used both salaries.
Correct.
So now that you and Elaine are going separate ways,
Right.
and Elaine is going to be keeping the house, will she be able to afford repayments on this house?
Cool.
And if the answer is no, you must go further and investigate on other options to say, because me as a husband, I don't want to come and finance this house. I want you to keep it and finance it. Now, the first option would say, are we going to sell
Okay.
and then split the profit?
Okay.
And then I would go find something
For myself.
for myself,
Elaine.
and then you go find something for yourself.
All right.
Or are we going to sell and then you can keep the profit and put a deposit on the new property, because of now you will still be staying with the kids.
Okay.
So those are those nice conversations. If, like my colleagues have said, you are matured enough to talk and engage on what's happening in your space. Now, if let's say Elaine on her own, she cannot afford this property, but she wants it. She doesn't want any other house. Now you take it further to say, when we get to a divorce, perhaps she should start looking for somebody that can partner with her into affording this house.
Okay.
Because of, remember, we spoke last week to say, when it comes to bonds, you can buy it with anybody.
Correct.
It doesn't have to be
Correct.
a spouse.
Okay.
So now you need to think about that to say, okay, maybe I will approach my uncle or my grandfather or my brother to say, or even my child, because of, like she said, her mom is 65 now. So you can see how big she is. So sometimes, like in terms of, yeah, but in terms of your
age
maturity
and
you are big
responsibility.
enough to be able to afford property.
Yes.
So you can even say, Mommy, you know what? Because we want this house to remain a family house, I will partner with you.
Okay.
So those are the options that you have. If your children are big enough to say, I will either partner with my child or seek for assistance from your relatives or your siblings. Or you can even go and say, I would want to, maybe we would tell her to say, look, now that the husband is going out, maybe you want to buy him out. Those are the options. Because of sometimes the husband can say, you can keep the house, but you need to buy me out. So you need also to make sure that you improvise financially for the buying out.
Okay.
To say, will I have money to buy her out? And then the third option,
Okay.
remember we spoke about selling, and then we spoke about maybe finding somebody that will partner with you and continue with the joint bond.
Correct.
Or we are saying now, the third one is maybe buying the other partner out if the other partner
Okay.
says, I still want my profit. Or we are saying, maybe now we get to that point that nobody wants to listen.
Okay.
Everybody's like, nobody's keeping this house. We're selling it, finish and clear.
Okay.
So now you need also to check, should we get to the point of it must be sold?
Yes.
How much will I qualify on my own to be able to acquire another property? And even if you reach that agreement to say, I'm buying you out or whatever the case might be, You as the person that's leaving this transaction, it's your responsibility to make sure that your name is removed. Elaine will say, will attest to it. In so many instances, we have people that are divorced, but their names are still appearing in those old bonds. The reason being, they did not apply that section 45 to say, my name must be removed from this thing.
When we come back, Elaine is going to teach me about the section 45. You see, I tell you, it's a simple thing. I tell you guys all the time, we have come to the end of the show. We've learned a lot. But one thing that I take away for myself is that even in marriage, you are still an individual responsible for your finances, for your financial well-being, an individual responsible for better communication with your partner, an individual responsible for the understanding that the children must still live, and we must work together to ensure that they have a better future. It is us who brought these families together. It is equally us who have the responsibility to ensure that life continues seamlessly. We're not here to create tension and unhealthy relationships. Remember, we still have to bring these children up together. Their health, their well-being, their financial security, and their success rests on us. So regardless of what difference we have with each other, divorce, separation should never be a stumbling block to us having healthy parenting and ultimately achieving financial wellness. I am Lorato Khomolemo. I'd like to thank Olwazini for hosting us as usual. We thank our partners for being with us today, the Department of Treasury for always keeping it together for us and ensuring that we deliver these messages to our people. Be secured in knowing that we will continue to help you count your rands and cents. Salam Sintle Bagolo.